Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. I'm good, and welcome to another episode of the Live Gamers Podcast. I'm here today with Mr. BlankaKong and Mr. Hado Wolf. No Zeta Kaiser tonight, no Esoteric tonight. They were at other commitments, but we three are here, and we hope to provide you with a good show and a good listen tonight. So, thank you for joining us, whether you're watching or listening. Thank you for being here. So, today's topic is kind of I guess, in the grand scheme of the video games and nerd culture that we talk about, I guess it's a ever evolving situation. So, depending on when you are listening or watching this video, things may have changed, things may have resolved. But what we're bringing you is what we know now on the date that we're filming. And this topic is the current beef goings on with Microsoft and Sony regarding Call of Duty specifically. And now, as we have come to learn, Microsoft and the Federal Trade Commission of the United States, their beef, because now the FTC is involved, and they're not really too keen on allowing Microsoft to buy Activision. Phil Spencer and the boys are not happy about this, and there have been some shade. There's been some shade being thrown that basically Microsoft is claiming Sony is getting in the way of things, and Sony is pushing the FTC to block this Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft. So we're going to talk about some things. We're going to share, our panelists tonight are going to give their opinions if they have any. So I'll start off with mine. I think this is kind of, as far as the gaming space goes, this is a big deal. And the reason I say this is a big deal is because the power that Call of Duty has. Now, for those that are our age or a little bit younger, they remember the heyday of Call of Duty. Most agree that it's Modern Warfare 2. That was the heyday of Call of Duty. That was kind of the pinnacle of early, mid 2000s online multiplayer experience. We have Halo as another contender, but arguably Call of Duty is a really big one. And because of the success of Modern Warfare 2 and games like it, Call of Duty has become a powerhouse when it comes to franchises. Now, we can sit here all day and argue that Call of Duty is a declining franchise. Call of Duty doesn't pull in the same numbers that it did in Modern Warfare days, and you would be right. I can't disagree with that. But if you kind of pull back the bias a little bit and look at what Call of Duty still is able to accomplish, even Modern Warfare 2, the remake of the original Modern Warfare, still has a huge player base. Now, how this relates to the Microsoft-Sony drama is that Microsoft, if they are allowed to buy Activision Blizzard, more importantly, in this case, the Activision part of it, they will own Call of Duty, which means they will own one of the most powerful video game franchises kind of in modern gaming history. And if they are allowed to own it, they can just block out Sony and Nintendo to a certain degree. But we'll talk about Nintendo in a little bit in relation to the Activision stuff. But they can block out Sony, which is their most direct competitor as far as the video game makers go. There's only three. There's Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. Nintendo kind of lives they do their own thing. They're in their own little environment. They'll peek their head out every now and then and say, "Hey, can we get a multi-platform release?" But they've got Zelda, Mario, Pokemon. They're completely fine on their own. Not 100% fine as the Wii U is testament to. You do need third-party support, but it's mostly Microsoft and Sony. Sony obviously doesn't want to lose the Call of Duty franchise because even though Sony has impressive first party titles like God of War, Horizon, the Horizon franchise, and they got exclusives like Final Fantasy and Forspoken, Call of Duty is still huge. In this day, as the filming of this video, 2023, Call of Duty is still huge. I have to kind of hammer that home for our viewers. Call of Duty is still a monumentally big and strong franchise. Regardless of if it's the juggernaut it was back in the 2000s or not. Doesn't matter. So Sony doesn't want Microsoft to own Activision. So Microsoft claims that Sony has gotten the Federal Trade Commission of the United States of America involved because Microsoft is an American corporation, so the FTC has jurisdiction with Microsoft. They accuse Sony of basically getting in the way, not wanting this deal to happen. Duh. And now the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft is tied up in the courts because now the FTC is involved and they're trying to kind of see if Microsoft can even buy Activision Blizzard so Microsoft doesn't become a monopoly corporation. Because if Microsoft gets Activision Blizzard, they have access to obviously Microsoft's suite of games. And then they have access to games like World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Overwatch 2, Diablo, which look, we shit on Diablo Immortal, but if you look how much Diablo Immortal made last year I should say, you sit down real quick. And more importantly, which is kind of the focus of this conversation, Activision, namely Call of Duty. So, the reason why I brought this up to my colleagues was because I just found it very funny that Microsoft now wants to play the victim. They want to go, oh, Sony's being a big bully. They don't want us to buy this company. We said we'll still keep Call of Duty on Sony platforms. Hell, we just signed a deal with Nintendo to release Call of Duty games on the Nintendo Switch. Which, me being a fan of the Nintendo Switch, I don't know why the fuck you would play Call of Duty on the Switch, but Call of Duty has existed on Nintendo platforms before. This is not abnormal. But I just find it incredibly funny because if you go back to yesteryear, during the 360 era, Microsoft was going around securing first-party deals with a ton of JRPGs. I couldn't play Star Ocean 4 when it came out because it was Xbox exclusive. I couldn't play Tales of Vesperia because it was Xbox exclusive. I only got to play Tales of Vesperia when it eventually came to the Nintendo Switch because the PlayStation 3 version of the game was Japan only. And unfortunately, I don't speak or read Japanese. So because Microsoft was throwing some Benjamins around, I couldn't play these games. So now I find it very funny that Microsoft is bemoaning and crying and whining, saying Sony's getting in the way. And as a quote from our boy Phil Spencer goes, Sony PlayStation grows by making Xbox smaller. That just sounds like a really jaded ex-girlfriend to me saying, oh, you couldn't handle me at my worst. You don't deserve me at my best. It's just like, bro, you were doing the same thing. And let's not kid ourselves. If only one company is allowed to own Call of Duty, they're going to have some serious, they're going to be making some money. So, I've rambled on enough. I hope I've given you gentlemen and the viewers at home kind of a general synopsis of what's going on with this whole Microsoft Sony beef, I guess, for lack of a better word. And now it's involving a government entity, which could always ends well when the government gets involved. Let me tell you, they can do no. So, I've gone on enough, like I said. I will now pass it off to these fine gentlemen that consist of our panel tonight. And, I know some of us, I've been researching it more, some of us more knowledge and less knowledge than others, but we're all intelligent adults here, and we've all played Call of Duty, and we all have a concept of business management. So, on that note, gentlemen, whoever wants to lead it, take it off. What do you guys think about all this?
So I'll start real quick because you did leave out interesting detail or retaliation. So just remind me because I know you're a little more well read on the topic. So as a result of this happening, right, of Sony kind of getting in the way, air quotes, of the sale, which I think is true. I think they're definitely getting in the way of the sale because it behooves them to do so. Mm-hmm. Microsoft threatened to make something exclusive. I think all the Bethesda games exclusive, right? Because they already acquired those guys. And in retaliation to that, Sony made sure that Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy 16 that is, and something else was like exclusive to PlayStation consoles. Is that accurate?
Yes. And Microsoft came back and said, well, that's not fair that Final Fantasy 16, the next entry in the Final Fantasy series, is relegated to Sony platforms. And I'm like, bro, you just said Bethesda. That means Elder Scrolls 6 and the inevitable Fallout 5 is not coming to anything but a Microsoft, aka PC or an Xbox. Bruh, people are still playing Skyrim as we speak. Like, come on. Like pot, kettle, black much?
Yeah, so, okay. Make no mistake about it. Microsoft has been gunning for Sony since the beginning. Since 2000, 2001 with the original Xbox. And they failed horribly at that point in time, right? The Xbox, well, I think it was a success in its own right. I think it performed well for being a new console, but, with a company that didn't have any history with console gaming. But when you compare that, their metrics, their sales, their global sales to like what the PlayStation 2 was doing at the time, there's no comparison. PlayStation 2 is the king. Not even close, right? They did beat GameCube and Nintendo, but that I don't feel like that's saying much. Not to shit on the GameCube or anything, but like the GameCube was like they had like really good first party titles, but like and good JRPGs from my understanding, but like they didn't produce much for the casual consumer at the time. So anyway, there's always been like bad blood between Microsoft and Sony, and that has never changed. I mean, even as recent as like the last console generation, where Sony had that amazing air quotes commercial where it's like, this is how you trade games on PlayStation. And it just had the two guys just hand the game to each other. Like, that was fucking great. But that was clearly a shot, right? So, like, ever since Phil Spencer kind of took over a more prominent role in the Xbox department of Microsoft, he's definitely been like the PR guy, like, oh, we're all just competitors and same, like just played really nice with everyone. But now that he's not getting his way, the mask is falling off a little bit, and he's starting to like get a little emotional, at least in interviews and on screen, which is typically not something he does, at least from what I've seen. So it's just interesting to see that happen and to see this, like, these two giant, like you said, these two giant corporations act like petulant children about like these toys. Like, this is my toy, so if you can't play with this toy, then I'm not gonna let you play with my Transformer. And that's what it sounds like, and that's really what it is. But it's just these two giant corporations, one clearly bigger than the other. Microsoft is like humongous. But we'll stick to Xbox versus PlayStation for now. It's definitely entertaining. But it is, I think, a sign of things to come. I think there will be a acquisition war impending. I think that over the next maybe 8 to 10 years, we're going to see less and less publishers and, more exclusivity between the different entities that develop these games. I could see that happening. I could see Nintendo getting in on it and maybe partnering up with more Japanese publishers on an exclusive basis. I could see that happening, and them kind of excluding, Xbox and Microsoft and even PC. I could see that happening. Maybe I could see Sony trying to acquire other companies. We had a podcast episode where we talked about companies buying each other out to have exclusive rights to certain IPs. It's as entertaining as it is bad for the industry as a whole, because let's say this deal goes through and Microsoft does acquire Activision Blizzard. What's stopping them from just making everything exclusive? Like, there's nothing stopping them per se, right? Because if Sony pisses them off enough, they go, you know what? You want to play this game? We have enough money to to just cut you out. And sure, it makes more business sense in the short term to do business with you and to publish these games on your platform because you have such a large user base. But who says we can't take some of that user base by just simply making these titles exclusive to our account, to our,
and I think that Sony is definitely scared of that, because there are people, again, there are still people in the year 2023 that all they play is Call of Duty. Warzone is fucking huge. People, you look at some people's systems and all they have is Warzone installed, because that's all they play and that's all they dedicate money to. And look, these people have no loyalty. If they go, where can I get Warzone? Oh, buy an Xbox. Cool. One Xbox, please. I want to play Warzone. Sony knows that. They know that, and they don't want to lose that.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't have the numbers. I don't know what the player base is. Oh, whoops. Hit my mic there. I don't know what the percentage player base is of, out of 100% of all PlayStation owners. Like, how much population does that equate to? Like, is it 50% of PlayStation owners play Call of Duty? Is it 40%? Is it 30%? I have no idea. But I know I can speculate that it's a huge number. It's big enough to where if they lose even a fraction of that population, it's going to spell bad news for their profitability. And I'm sure that's not something they want. Considering how much the PlayStation department, the PlayStation brand, has done for the Sony brand as a whole, given just the change of technology and the dip in business for like their TV division and like cameras and cell phones and all their other tech that they used to develop. I think they still develop it. It's just not a big enough market share because companies like Samsung and LG have kind of taken up more of that pie. So this is a battle they don't want to lose, and I get it. But the people who are going to suffer the most in the mix of this are us, right? Because then we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if you're a Final Fantasy fan, but you also like American RPGs like Fallout or Elder Scrolls, you have to, at that point, you either have to choose which one you like more, or you have to get both consoles to access both kinds of content, which, there's a lot of gamers who do own both consoles, and that's fine, but that's, how many people is that, right? Like, out of 10 gamers, hardcore gamers, air quotes, like, it's got to be less than 5, right? It's got to be like maybe a third.
Yeah.
Maybe less than that have both consoles just because they can afford it.
I've always had two, a Nintendo because I'm a Nintendo fan and their first parties are, until the sun extinguishes, I don't think Zelda will ever be on another platform, and usually for me it was Sony. So yeah, it's usually two, but I know there are plenty of people that it's just one. And before we proceed, just for some context for our viewers and you guys, I just took a quick look at Twitch and the most popular things being streamed on Twitch. Number one is just chatting. We know we got to get our pool content, so I'm not counting that. But number one is Escape from Tarkov, which is a PC first-person shooter. GTA 5 because GTA 5 Online's a beast. League of Legends because it's fucking League. And at number 4, Call of Duty Warzone 2.0, the newest version of Call of Duty Warzone with currently 98.1k viewers. So, if we're going to use Twitch as a metric, a popular streaming service, Call of Duty Warzone is number 4. 98,000 people watching various streamers play Warzone. That should give you, the viewer, an indication that Sony does not want to lose this franchise, because if it goes through, all those 98K people watching and the streamers playing it are all going to be playing it on PC or an Xbox. So just some more context.
I think that's a really good bring up, just to kind of illustrate like what that means. And that metric isn't like, that's not telling us like what that means for the future, as far as like if this deal goes through, how much of a market share does Sony lose. Like, we don't really know what that number is. We can't know until it happens, but we can assume that it is going to be fucking substantial.
Right, but it just shows that COD, or at least Warzone, which is Call of Duty, whatever, it's not, it's not Team Deathmatch, but it's Call of Duty, is still popular after all these years. It's not the juggernaut it used to be, but it is still popular, and I can see some Sony CEOs fucking, trying to loosen their collars a bit, getting a little hot under the collar, hearing that they might lose access to the Call of Duty franchise.
So, Wolf, what are your thoughts on this whole deal?
Give me a moment. 1 second. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So I'll just continue on. I don't know. Like, I'm excited to see it because it's entertaining, but I know in the long run it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. Because,
yeah, I mean, I can do it from like a past, because I don't play Call of Duty anymore.
Me neither. Like, it's whatever to me. I don't care about that, but I know a lot of people do, and we obviously represent the minority in this particular topic of, I don't play Call of Duty. Like, I literally don't play it. Not that I can't play it, or not that I haven't played it, but I'm just kind of over it. Like, I'm playing other stuff.
Yeah.
So but for the casual player, like, I know a lot of people, and I've met a lot of people who only play Call of Duty. Like, that's it. And to lose access to that, these people are going to be quick to jump ship. And Microsoft knows this. Like, it's a power grab. Like, come on. Like, how could it not be a power grab? They're going to frame it in a way where, no, we're going to play nice, and we're also going to do business.
Oh, they said that. Like, they're like, we have no intentions of removing access to Call of Duty from Sony. What was their quote? We're doing this on the fly, folks. So yeah, okay. So this is a quote from Phil Spencer saying that Sony is trying to protect its dominance on the console. The way they grow is by making Xbox smaller. I've already said that. Sony has a very different view of the industry than we do. They don't ship their games day and date on the PC. They do not put their games into the subscription service when they launch their games. So we were talking about Diggs. That's basically Phil Spencer saying, hey, look, you come to Xbox, you're going to get Halo day one. You're going to get Gears day one, let's say. You're going to get our first parties day one. You allow us to get Xbox? You a Game Pass owner? You allow us to get Activision Blizzard? You want that new WoW expansion? Day one. You want that new Warzone update? Day one. You want that new Diablo? Day one. And it just sounds like well, Sony doesn't do this because they're lame. We at Xbox are cool, so we do this. It's just like, bro,
my dick's bigger than theirs. Right. That's really what it is. And it's true. Like, I'm gonna sound like a shill almost. Like, they do provide really good value with the Game Pass. They really do. Even though I don't have Game Pass personally, because I like to own the physical media of my games. But I know you have Game Pass, Gunnar.
I do.
And I can't deny that Game Pass has a lot of value. Like, it's really good. You have access to stuff day one, which is pretty incredible. for no additional fee, right? There's no like that bullshit Disney Plus tried to do where like certain movies came out, you have to pay for your subscription, but also you have to pay like a premium price to access this particular piece of
Yeah,
content.
you pay $12 a month, but if you want to watch Mulan now, give us $30.
Yeah. Like that's not what Microsoft is doing. But the reason why Microsoft isn't doing that is because they could afford not to. Right? It's
Yeah.
they're taking a hit on these potential charges because it's like, well, if we gain favor, if we build enough of a population or a user base, that we're going to make money on the back end of this whole deal, right? If this deal goes through, and let's say they continue to make Call of Duty available on other platforms, they're going to have control over it, right? So they're going to be able to dictate like how content is distributed as far as like extra content, DLC content. They're like, well, it's going to be available first on Xbox and PC. PlayStation, you can wait, right? And then that's going to drive people to maybe I want to play Call of Duty on Xbox. Maybe I want to transition to PC, right? And it's just a control thing, right? They just want to control the market. It is a monopoly move. Like there's no doubt about it. No matter how you phrase it, that's what it is.
I mean, look, I would be the first one to criticize it, but I do agree. If you look at it, they now own Blizzard. They now own Bethesda, and again, like I stressed earlier, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, huge franchises. Like they want to own Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and Diablo. I mean, WoW and Diablo aren't as big as they used to be, but WoW is still arguably the second most popular MMO. So, I mean, maybe the big catch is Call of Duty, but you got to remember if they get Activision Blizzard,
there's still big fish other than Call of Duty in that net that they're trying to cast. And yeah, you're absolutely right, because like I don't know how many users are currently playing Diablo, or not Diablo, WoW, but like they're still, I think, right behind 14 or right next to Final Fantasy 14 is like the biggest MMOs of congruent users daily. Like that's nothing to scoff at, right? Having access to that's big, man. That's huge.
Yeah.
As well as Diablo, like people still play Diablo 3. People. I remember when Diablo 2 remake came out a handful of months ago. People were going crazy over that. People were going crazy over Diablo 4. You mentioned Diablo Immortal. I don't play mobile games. I don't really care for Diablo in general, personally, but again, I'm on Outcast when it comes to these things. That game made a ton of money. Do you think Microsoft doesn't see that and go, we could have that under our umbrella? Yep. And just have another like quadrant of of content that's just producing residual funds for our overall corporation? Why not? Yeah, just throw a few billion their way. We could afford it. It's fine. And they're right. And Sony sees that. They see the line in the sand. They see the writing on the wall. And they go, fuck that. We can't allow that to happen. Because if it does, we're fucked, man. Like, there's only so much God of War is going to do for us. There's only so much Spider-Man is going to do for us. Like, we can't afford to lose the casual market. It's a huge market. And then to split that with Nintendo on top of that, right? Nintendo's the other kind of like ominous third party in place where they have a large market share and a dedicated market share. There isn't anybody who's going to be like, yeah, I'm ditching my Switch for an Xbox. It's just two different kind of consumers. So yeah, Sony has every right, and they should be fighting for this, because if this happens, this is a heavy blow.
Yeah, they can't do anything about WoW. They can't do anything about Diablo. But they're going to fight tooth and nail for that Call of Duty because it's all they got.
Mm-hmm. You're back, Wolf?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, man. So what are your thoughts on this whole debacle?
Oh, God. It's like, yeah, it's real childish. To me, it's really childish. But at the same time, I do understand why Sony would have to step in and, I guess, I push back against Microsoft wanting to buy Activision. But I do remember from when Microsoft first came out with the original Xbox, they did make it a point that they were looking to be like a monopoly type video game company back in high school. So I guess that's the plan that they're going to go with, and that's probably what they're looking to do. But yeah, that's a situation that's going to hurt the fans in a lot of ways, especially those that are what they call them, Sony ponies.
I don't know. Maybe this terminology is out of date, but I know them as Sony ponies, X Bros, and
Wasn't it
Nintendroids.
Xbots? Nah,
Is
wasn't
it
it
Xbox?
Xbots with a T?
There you go, Xbots.
That's what
There
I
you
think
go.
it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're gonna all those guys is gonna have to if they want their dosage of Call of Duty, they're gonna have to buy a whole new console. But they're gonna look at it as one investment for a video game for the only video game that they really play.
Yeah.
So a lot of people they're gonna take that initiative and they're gonna move over from Sony to Xbox. This whole getting the government or whatever government type company involved and all that other stuff is like, wow, like that's something I've never thought that two video game companies would ever have to do in
Mom,
my
he's trying to
entire
buy
life.
Activision. Mom, that's the energy I got from that.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
my mom, tell Xbox stop making fun of me. It's like, it's sad. It's so sad that it's gone down to like video games became what from was once something that's just like a great pastime for people who are looking to make friends in a different way other than sports or movies or, in a more niche way, and or people who are loners and just want to, interact with something else. Video games at what some point was very simple, very straightforward. You had your companies that, Microsoft, Nintendo and Sega went back and forth with their nonsense, but it was never this big. It was never this childish. This is it's like
I don't know, man. It was pretty childish back then. The Microsoft, not Microsoft,
yeah, but
PlayStation.
it was
Fuck. Sega and Nintendo
Sega.
Wars back in the day.
That dead video game publisher.
Yeah, it was hilarious to see their ads, but the ads for us in that day, it was more like, oh shit, like you really took that, like, yo, he made a yo mama joke. That's what the ads were the day.
Uh,
Like,
Wolf brings
the
up a good
rivalry.
point. He does. Yeah. Because I
And
remember.
now
God.
now like video games went from being maybe a few $1,000s to make. Now they're these big
Yeah.
billion-dollar and companies are willing to literally gut another company just for that, just for that alone. It's like it went from just being like creating video games for people to enjoy, which I felt like the older video game consoles were about, to just like now it's not even really about the video game, or it's not even about bringing entertainment to your consumers. I mean, I always do say it. They are a company for a reason. They're not just bringing us entertainment because they want to, they woke up this morning and they were very happy and they wanted everybody else to be happy too. They're doing it obviously for money in their pockets, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Or else the video games would be free, right? Um, but it's gotten to the point where it's just more like it's video games have just become something that's just more than just a great pastime. If it's not political, then it's freaking Sony and Microsoft literally causing a war in the video game space because one wants to buy a whole company and become this super villain monopoly company, and then the other one is just like, well, we think we're the heroes and want to step in and whine about it and complain about it till the government has to get involved. Like, first and foremost, Sony is all the way in fucking Japan. Yes, there's a Sony of America, I know that, but at the end of the day, it's just like each company can survive in their own space, right? The purpose of these companies like Blizzard, like Activision, these smaller game companies, they make video games on multiple consoles so that they can strive too. Like if for instance Activision makes a video game for Xbox, that video game can be for Xbox. But it doesn't. But the great thing about them is that they now have the ability to say, okay, well, let's make a video game on the PlayStation 5 because the PlayStation 5 has this capabilities, that capability. Let's do something on the PlayStation 5, and then they can do that too. But you got a company that's, well, you have this, big daddy money bucks, Xbox, and they wanna just buy up everything, and it's just like, well, damn, like, what do you like? What's the real gain here? Is the gain just like, is it really like you really need that much money in your pocket to where you feel like you
Yes.
have to buy up everything and all your video games become exclusive for your console?
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
I don't know. I've grown so content with Nintendo, and I said it when we were early days in college. I said, in the end of the day, Nintendo is gonna be is gonna stay strong. And there were a lot of people who didn't believe me, but I feel like Nintendo's gonna stay strong. And even after this whole thing starts off and blows up, Nintendo is still gonna stay strong. Why? Ain't nobody trying to buy Zelda. Ain't nobody trying to buy Mario because ain't nobody can buy Nintendo. So
I can imagine
Nintendo
what
is
those
gonna stay
calls are
on
like.
time.
Phil Spencer calling like fucking Doug Bowser. He's like, I'd like to talk about an acquisition deal. It's like, fuck off. And it just hangs up. No. I'm
well,
good.
well, your system is using a chip from 2015 to say, yeah, well, we sold fucking X billion dollars with the Switch, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem to
it's
matter
just
Well,
much.
like,
the funny thing is Nintendo
I don't
wouldn't
know.
even respond. They would just leave them on red. Like literally, like whatever.
I'm just saying. My point is just like, I remember a day where video games were very straightforward. They were very simple, and now because of the changes in, obviously, economy, the changes in technology, the changes in what people want and what people are interested in, it's taking this very, what was considered at one point a very niche hobby into something that's just like well blown out of the water, well overdone and exaggerated on many levels. This is crazy to me. I'm listening to you guys talk about it. I'm learning a lot about it. I didn't know about it before. I didn't know anything about that before. So that's the best I can put up right with. This is the best input I can put in right now.
Mhm.
But wow, that's fucking wild. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, you brought up some good points. One of them I kind of picked up on when you were talking was how games were back then. I mean, obviously, when we were younger, we didn't know about the nuances of corporations and making a profit. We just thought people did this shit because they loved video games. Now we know it's money, and one can make the argument that it's a bigger driving force than it used to be. But something you said about games just being, you know, kind of preference to what you wanted to play on. I remember there were like
Mhm.
different versions of Mortal Kombat, for
Yeah.
example. Like you had the Sony, the Nintendo one, which had the lesser graphics. They had sweat instead of blood. They took out the
Mm.
finishers. It's like, oh, that's the baby Mortal Kombat. Then you have the Sega
Mhm.
version, which had the blood and the fatalities and had better graphics. Like it really wasn't about, oh, you know, Sega owns the exclusive rights to Mortal Kombat. They were like, well, if you want Mortal Kombat, okay, these are your Mortal Kombat games you have access to. If you're a
Mhm.
Nintendo player, okay, sorry, you got to get the one that looks a little bit, funkier, the one that took out the blood because Nintendo doesn't want blood in their games. But we all had Mortal Kombat. We all had access to it. I didn't have to
Yeah.
worry about Sega owning Mortal Kombat, or I had to go to Nintendo so I can get Final Fantasy or things like that. Or I can't play Ninja Turtles because that's exclusive to the Atari. Like you didn't have that back then. Now it's just like all these like fucking garden cities of different platforms, and they just like have cannons aimed at each other, and Nintendo's just like standing there like, why is everybody upset? Why is everybody mad? Just it's a me hug. But all right, now everything's about the bottom line, and we have to have it on our platform because we need all the people there, and we need people on our platform spending fucking COD bucks to get microtransactions on our system so we make the most money. Just like, oh,
Yeah,
bro,
that's
just play the
wild.
game.
Well, one of the biggest differences in that situation, if we're comparing like the Sega versus Nintendo versus, compared to like the Microsoft Sony wars of today, like we're talking about two Japanese companies competing with each other. And yes, there were like Sega of America and Nintendo of America, and of course those entities did influence the North American market or whatever. I understand that, but at the core, these companies are Japanese companies, and they make the final say on whatever it is they decide to do. And so with Japanese culture, as far as like I understand it, I don't claim to like be an expert. Is there's more honor in how they do things. Like they're less prone to doing like what we would consider underhanded tactics or like shady tactics. Whereas Microsoft or American companies are more than willing to choke you out if they have the money to do it. Doing it, get this motherfucker out of here. Like there is no real honor with them. There's no like, oh, let's be, let's let them exist. It's best for the consumer. No. What's best for like what Gunnar said? Our bottom line, profitability. Can we grow from this, this year compared to last year? Like that's to them. It's just like I just want to grow and get bigger and get bigger and get bigger. And anybody who's like, oh, that's not what Phil Spencer wants to do. That's not what Microsoft wants to do. You're in denial, bro. Like that's absolutely what they want to do. If they can choke out Sony, if they can choke out Nintendo, they will. Like there's no doubt in my mind they'll do that shit at the drop of a hat. So yeah, let's not pretend like Phil Spencer has everybody's best interest in heart. Maybe to some degree he does, but like as the corporation, Microsoft, nah, they're looking to maximize profits. They're looking to control as much of the market as possible, and they're trying to turn the biggest profit that they can. Period. Like there's no question about that.
I do agree. Phil has made some decent points in the gaming sphere, like how Sony has this weird reluctance to crossplay. I think crossplay should just be a thing, right? I think it should be a thing left up to the player. If you don't want to play with PC players because you think, if you're playing a shooter, for example, and you mouse and keyboard aiming is superior and you don't want to deal with that, that should be a user experience to block that person. But I do agree that we should, like, come on, this is 2023, man. Like, we should stop having these segregated. Yeah,
but let's not pretend like he's saying that for the good of the consumer. He's saying that because Xbox, we're not talking PC, we're talking just Xbox right now. Xbox has the smallest user base. That's why he's pushing for it. Because he wants to influence, he wants bigger influence in the market. So Xbox has the smallest user base in any game. If we look at like Call of Duty, let's say Cold War numbers, right? You look at PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Xbox always has a smaller user base by a significant margin. So I don't know what those numbers are, right? But I know it's smaller. I almost know for a fact it's smaller. It's always smaller.
Okay, well, no, you're more than likely right. Yeah.
It's still a good idea, though. Like, crossplay should be...
Sure. I agree.
Much like, online, right. It should be a normal thing, but I do understand that, obviously, they're speaking with a motive instead of just... And the motive really is what's going to benefit the company, right? Because that's the reason why they put him out there. They put him up there. They gave him that seat because they trusted him to make their investors money, to make the CEO money, to make, the board of the company money. And in the end of the day, they'll never make enough money. That's their mentality they're going with. We're not making enough money. We can go beyond what we're making. We can, even if it's just a penny more, let's do this. Let's do what we had to do to make that one penny more. That's corporate. That's how companies strive. That's how companies continue to last, is because they're always putting in that extra nudge to, one up either the competition or to just wipe out the competition. And I think that's what Microsoft is going with. Microsoft is a whole nother beast when compared to like Sony and Nintendo, because Nintendo is content in their own space. Nintendo is that quiet child that sits in the corner and plays with his Lego all day. You know, like he doesn't give a flying fuck about what's going on around him. Either
Nope.
you accept the fact that he's playing with his Legos, or you come and you sit with him and play the Legos with him. But other than that, he's gonna stay in his corner, not bothering anyone. That's what Nintendo is like for me. Whereas Sony and Microsoft is that dominating personalities. It's like, yeah, we have to be the forefront. We have to be when people think of video games, one wants Sony, the other one wants Microsoft to be the first thing that comes to their mind. But Microsoft is a different beast because they are willing to, like, their goal, like, and it's obviously with this action, it's obvious, right? They are adamant on snuffing out competition. They bought Rare to do nothing with Rare. They gave us Killer Instincts, few months or maybe a year or two of DLC from Killer Instincts, and that's it. Nothing. So why did you really buy Rare? What was
Control.
it? Was it that you just was your piggy bank overflowing and you needed to spend a little money? Did you reach the cap of 99999? So so your own little video game world was telling you have to spend your currency on something? Like, what was the point of buying some of these companies if you're not doing anything with them? So the only thing that leads me to believe is that they are very adamant on becoming a monopoly in the gaming industry. And as someone who understands why corporate companies do the things they do, have at it. Because in the end of the day, what are we gonna do about it, right? Like, there's nothing we're really can do about it. But at the same time, I know there's gonna be people out there that's like, oh my gosh, Microsoft makes enough money. Why? Yeah, they make enough money, but the point is they want to make more. They want to make all the money, not just more money or some money. They want to make all the money.
If you ask any executive, like, how much would you like to make in 2023? The answer is always yes. There's no number. It's yes. I want to make all the money. I don't care how much it is, as long as it's more than last year.
Exactly.
I was gonna say something. Oh, this is what I was gonna, because you bring up a good point. They bought Rare and did nothing with it, and I mentioned that in the last week's episode, when we were talking about like 2023 and like what we want, what changes we want to see in our resolutions or whatever. They have IPs, like they have Perfect Dark, they have Banjo-Kazooie, they have Killer Instinct, they have others that I can't think of right now. They're not doing shit with them. They have Fable. They have Gears of War. They have Halo. They've got all these IPs that, they're not doing enough with. And if they took a fraction of what they invested into this acquisition and invested it into revamping those games, like, we would have, hopefully, theoretically, some really good revivals of like some of the IPs that I just mentioned. But the problem is Microsoft doesn't. Their strategy has always been brute force. Let's just buy everything out because I can. Like, it's like if you as an individual, like, I'm not rich. None of us here are rich or even wealthy, right? But think about all the problems that you have as an individual, right? And think about if I was rich, like stupid rich, like billionaire rich, how many of those problems would simply go away?
A lot of them.
Most of them. Majority of them. Like 99% of them would go away like that, right? With money. Money can solve a lot of problems. It can't solve all your problems, but it can solve a lot of your problems, right? And so Microsoft is in a position where they have a lot of money. So it's like, we could invest into our studios, build new studios, work with the IPs that we have, gain favor with the gaming community, build a legacy of content over time, or we'll just throw a bag of money at the guys who've already done all of that. Let's just throw a bag of money at Activision because they have 15 or 16 years of Call of Duty, and they've already built this fan base and built this reputation where the name alone, Call of Duty, you sell millions of copies just off the name alone. Like, people don't even see the gameplay. They go, "Yep, Call of Duty. Here's my money. I want it." It's not even like a question, right? So Microsoft's like, "That's cool. Yeah, I want that. Here, money. Give me. Done." That's their strategy, and Sony can't do that. And so they're trying to do everything they can to either slow it down or stop it completely. We'll see what happens. I think the deal is supposed to finalize June of this year, so we'll see what comes of that.
Yo, Sony gonna do everything in their power to push that shit back.
No,
Like,
that
they're gonna do
because if they
everything in
lose
their
it,
power.
like when Microsoft bought Bungie, not Bungie, yeah, but Bethesda, sorry, they bought Sony bought Bungie.
Mhm.
They were like, oh well, we got the Destiny guys now, and everyone was like, ooh, okay, nice clap back, as they say on the streets. It's just like
Then Microsoft was like, "Oh, that was just my loose change." All right, get my honey, get my checkbook. I'm gonna make a real big purchase now. So was like, oh,
Mom, he's buying Activision.
so
I don't
funny.
know,
That's
man. Like, it's,
insane to me. That's I don't know. That's
I
crazy.
could see why Sony's sweating. They should be, but
Yeah, because like Call of Duty, the franchise that Call of Duty is, it's like the non-exclusive Pokemon games, right? Like Pokemon, if Pokemon was non-exclusive and was across all three boards, Microsoft would have probably went almost go bankrupt just to have Pokemon, right? So I understand the idea of needing or wanting to own Call of Duty as a title, because then you have sole control over such a very popular, influential video game ever. Like even people who don't play video games, they know Call of Duty, right? Um, I know people who don't play video games, and if I say, yeah, my oldest son loves playing Call of Duty, they can say, okay, well, yeah, they know that. Much like I can tell most people, oh yeah, I can say the name Pikachu to most people, and they'll know it's a Pokemon, or
Mhm.
they'll know the Pokemon franchise. So it's like Call of Duty is like that. That is like the Pokemon between Xbox and Sony, whereas like that's a video game franchise that's guaranteed to sell off of the title alone. Just the title alone is what's going to make that franchise sell, is what's going to get people to buy it. Um, but it's so I understand their point of view on wanting to own it, but at the same time, like there's no right or wrong in this, because as a corporate company, you're gonna have you have the right to want to make as much money and to beat out your competition. That's just that's the way of the jungle, and it's always been like that, and that's what it's gonna be for the remainder of time, right? Unless we go into a post-apocalyptic world or something, but
I'm
you
ready.
know but that's just what companies do. And at the same time, I don't blame Sony on also wanting to interfere in this deal, because it's going to hurt their pockets too. And these companies aren't doing it for free, like I said many times before, and even earlier on this podcast. Neither company is doing this for free, so it's inevitably going to become a tug of war situation. I think they need to come to an agreement where, like, even if Microsoft owns Activision, Activision will create games that's exclusive for the Xbox, but keep Call of Duty non-exclusive between the two of them. Even if Sony players have to wait 6 months, or
That's what
or a
Sony
certain
doesn't want,
time.
because
Yeah,
apparently
they don't
Microsoft
want it.
did make an offer. It was like, we'll give you 3 years of
Mm.
guaranteed Call of Duty, and they spat on that deal. I was like, no, fuck
yeah.
you. We don't want that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, think about it. Like companies, they do they. I mean, BlankaKong, you would know this because you understand this part of your job or your company anyway. Companies don't plan for what's going to happen next year. They don't plan what's going to happen the year after that. They don't plan what's going to happen the year after that. They have a game plan for years and years and years and years and years, right? Like the iPhone, I believe the guy had set up Apple to have a game plan for the iPhone for I think 10 years before he passed away, unfortunately. And that's how companies work. Like they figure out their numbers, and then they go, well, how many years can we go on making profit before we have to change our game plan. And then sometimes they'll see, okay, well, I don't know, 10 years, not enough. Let's change it now to see if we can extend our profits to the next 15 years or the next 20 years. You know, car companies tend to do that often. They'll predetermine how long they think they'll profit for for many, many years ahead. If Sony does that, I don't know. I mean, I would assume they would. If Sony does that and they see like, okay, well, yeah, we'll get this profit for 3 years, but then we're going to dramatically dip on the fourth year. Video game consoles come out every 5 to 6 years, roughly. So,
Yeah.
okay, so by the time they lose Call of Duty, it would be on the wave of what is potentially the next console for both consoles, for both companies. What is the next level of their consoles? At least that's what we'll be looking into as consumers. So what are they going to do then? They don't have a Call of Duty to help introduce their new console, if they're going to come with one. Or they're just going to take a dramatic hit because they no longer have to keep their player base. So yeah, they'll go great for 3 years, but 3 years will fly by like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Then what? I think Call of Duty should just stay exclusive, but the Sony players would just have to wait a little bit longer to play their games, which still doesn't help that much, but at least it's a easier blow to take.
Yeah, but that's still huge, and enough people will jump to have accessibility to the game right away. Enough people will jump to make a substantial dip in their user base and their sales and everything. Like, it's going to hurt big time, and that's what Microsoft wants. They have the money to wait. They're like, I'm here all day, bro. I'm good. I'm chilling. So that's just the way it is, and Sony's just gonna have to figure it out. Microsoft has a lot of things to do. Like, even if they get the approval from the Federal Trade Commission of America, they still have to go through the UK one. They still have to go through other, like, each major country has their own like trade commission, and they have to get that all regulated to sell or to like get that green light across the board for global sales. So this isn't over. Like, this is just the beginning. And domino effect that I foresee happening is, let's say this trade does go through for Microsoft. Let's say Microsoft does acquire Activision Blizzard 100%. Who's to say, we already mentioned it before, that Microsoft could very easily just retaliate and go, you know what, fuck you. That 3-year deal, that's done. We're taking this shit over, and that's done. And then Sony might go ahead, you know what? I'm gonna call my friends at Capcom and call my friends at Square Enix, and then we're all Japanese, so we're all gonna cut a deal, and we're gonna cut you out. So no Final Fantasy for you, no Street Fighter for you. Fuck you. It's already happened. Street Fighter V. It's happening with the current Final Fantasy games. Who say it won't happen with others?
They've made grumbles about 16, and I didn't even know about Street Fighter V. Street Fighter V, and
well, Street Fighter V happened. That was only on PS4. Street Fighter 6 is the new one coming out.
Sorry, 6, yeah.
Yeah, so that could happen. I'm saying, I don't know, Capcom, I don't know. They're pretty close with Sony, I would assume. So, like, I could see it happening. Resident Evil exclusive for PlayStation, that could happen, right? If they pay them enough money, they'll do it. So,
yeah, man.
We'll see who's really loyal to who.
I just want to keep my head down and get my little RPGs. I'm not.
There's a reason why Xbox's main color is green. Just saying. So.
Yep. So.
Anyway, for those listening, if you made it this far, thank you very much. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like or dislike, whatever you like, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think about this. This was like a long-winded conversation about a very simple topic, but hey, that's our podcast. We try to do at least an hour of conversation, so you can hear us bitch and complain about things that don't really matter in this long-term, big picture scheme of things. Because if the zombies attack, none of this matters. Subscribe for more content. We release a podcast every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard. So check us out for that. We also do other kinds of content, 2-minute reviews on the various games or products we use, long-form gameplay content. We also have a Discord. We run social media, so we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check out those links in the description if you're interested. Also, Mr. Esoteric streams on Twitch. He's not a part of this particular episode, but he is the face, the host, whatever. He's the main guy of the channel. He is the logical gamer, I guess. He streams on logicalgamers.tv, switch.tv, twitch.tv, usually every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So check him out there, give him a follow, and that's pretty much it. So we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Till next time.